The screen door slammed like a gunshot in the still evening air of El Paso, the kind of slam that echoed off the adobe walls of the old ranch house and rattled the wind chimes Mama had hung years ago to ward off bad spirits. Sage's voice cracked through the dust-choked porch, raw and unfiltered. "Mama, I'm in love with her. With Elena. And I can't pretend anymore, not for you, not for this town, not for God himself." Ruby froze mid-step, her calloused hands clutching the grocery bag so tight the paper tore, spilling oranges across the cracked wooden boards like spilled blood from a fresh wound. In that instant, the world Ruby had built, brick by painful brick, after Papa's truck flipped on that rain-slicked highway outside Juarez, fractured like the parched earth after a summer storm. She was 54, her body a map of hard labor. The diner shifts that left her feet swollen, the night stitching quilts for tourists who romanticized the border like it was some postcard from heaven. Pride had been her armor, the stiff spine that kept her from crumbling when the bills piled up and the neighbors whispered about the widow who couldn't keep her man alive. But now, staring at her only child, her Sage, 25, with those wild curls that caught the sun like copper wire and eyes that held the desert's fierce green, Ruby felt the armor crack. Sage had always been the light in their dim-lit life. The girl who climbed the Chinabarra trees and dreamed of Hollywood spotlights instead of grease traps and graveyard shifts. Born under a full moon in the back of Ruby's pickup on the way to the hospital, Sage had come into the world screaming, as if she knew the fight she'd inherit. Ruby had raised her alone, teaching her to pray the rosary with knuckles white as bone, to honor the saints and the family name that stretched back to the vaqueros who tamed this wild stretch of West Texas. El Paso wasn't forgiving. It was a town of barbed wire and Bible verses, where the Rio Grande whispered secrets of crossings and losses, and folks clung to tradition like driftwood in a flood. But love? This kind of love? Ruby's mind reeled back to her own youth, stolen kisses with a boy from the wrong side of the tracks, the shotgun wedding that never happened because Papa's pride demanded better. She'd swallowed her dreams for duty, for survival. And now Sage, her mirror in so many ways, was shattering that same glass ceiling with a confession that tasted like betrayal. "You think this is easy for me?" Sage pressed, stepping closer, her voice a tremor in the gathering dusk. The air smelled of creosote and cooling asphalt, the distant hum of semis on it, and a reminder that the world kept moving, even when yours stopped. Ruby dropped the bag fully now, the fruit rolling lazy circles at her boots. Her throat burned, words bubbling up like bile. "Love? That's what you call it? Sneaking around with that woman from the gallery, the one with the tattoos and the city talk? Sage mi hija, this ain't love, it's a sin. A sickness. What would your abuela say? What would God?" The words hung heavy, sharper than the thorns on the prickly pear fencing their yard. Sage recoiled as if slapped, her face crumpling, those green eyes, inherited from some long-lost Irish rancher in the family tree, brimming with tears that she blinked back fierce as a dust devil. The porch light flickered on, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts across the peeling paint. Ruby's heart hammered, a mix of fury and fear she couldn't untangle. Pride swelled in her chest, the old familiar swell. "We don't bend, we don't break." That's what she'd told herself when the bank nearly foreclosed, when the lupus flares left her bedridden and whispering pleas to La Virgin. But survival? That was the knife's edge they'd walked since Papa's death 10 years back. The house, the diner job, Sage's art scholarships, they were threads in a fraying tapestry. And now this. A daughter choosing a path that could unravel it all. The church ladies' gossip, the lost customers, the isolation that already gnawed at their edges like termites in the beams. Sage laughed then, a bitter, broken sound that sliced through Ruby like glass. "God? Mama, if God's so loving, why'd he make me this way? Why'd he let me feel this pull toward Elena? Like she's the missing piece of my soul." She gestured wildly, her hands, paint-stained from canvases that dreamed of landscapes beyond the border, flailing as if to paint the ache in the air. Elena was the spark, the curator from the El Paso Museum of Art who'd wandered into Sage's life 6 months ago at a local art fair. Tall with ink-black hair and a laugh like wind chimes in a breeze, Elena saw in Sage what Ruby never had. A fire untamed, a talent that could light up galleries in Santa Fe or even New York. Ruby shook her head, stepping back until her heels hit the screen door. "You're throwing away everything for a fancy dream. For that. Folks here, they don't understand. They'll turn on us, Sage. The diner's all we got. My health, it's slippin'. And without that job. Her voice trailed, the unsaid truth a chasm between them. The lupus had come on slow. A thief in the night, stealing her energy, her sleep. Meds cost a fortune and the insurance was a joke. Pride had kept her working through the pain, smiling through the flares, but survival meant swallowing hard truths. And this truth? It threatened to drown them both. As the first stars pricked the indigo sky, Sage knelt, gathering the spilled oranges with trembling hands. I didn't choose this, Mama, but I can't choose you over me anymore. Elena. She sees me. All of me. The words were a plea. A bridge extended over the widening rift. Ruby watched, her chest tight, memories flooding. Sage as a toddler, chubby fists clutching her apron. Sage at 16 winning that art contest with a painting of the river at dawn, light bending like hope. How had they come to this? The border winds whispered no answers, only the faint call of coyotes in the hills. Inside, the house felt smaller, the walls closing in with Saint's eyes judging from their frames. Ruby busied herself in the kitchen, chopping onions that stung like accusations, while Sage retreated to her room, the door clicking shut like a verdict. That night, sleep evaded Ruby, her mind a whirlwind of rosaries and regrets. Pride or survival? The choice loomed, a storm on the horizon, as relentless as the monsoons that could flood the arroyos overnight. Dawn broke over El Paso like a reluctant confession, painting the Franklin Mountains in strokes of rose and gold that Sage would have captured on canvas if her heart weren't shattering. She slipped out before Ruby stirred, her backpack slung over one shoulder, filled with sketchbooks and the few dollars from her part-time gig at the coffee shop. Elena's text had come at midnight. Come to me, amor. We'll figure this out. It was a lifeline, thin as monofilament, but Sage clung to it as she pedaled her battered bike down Alameda Avenue, the morning chill nipping at her exposed arms. The town stirred slowly, taquerias firing up griddles, rancheros tuning radios to ranchera ballads that wailed of lost loves and unbreakable bonds. Sage's mind raced ahead to Elena's apartment above the gallery, a sunlit haven of exposed brick and abstract prints that smelled of turpentine and possibility. They'd met under the relentless July sun at the art fair, Sage's booth a riot of desert florals and oils, Elena's eyes lingering on a piece called Rio Renegade, a swirling tribute to the Grande's untamed flow. This is you, Elena had said, her voice a velvet drawl laced with Chicago edges. Fierce. Unapologetic. Now 6 months in, that fierceness was Sage's anchor. But the confession to Ruby had unleashed a tempest, one that left her adrift. By the time she crested the hill to the arts district, sweat beaded her brow, mixing with unshed tears. Elena was waiting on the stoop, coffee mug in hand, her lithe frame wrapped in a kimono that fluttered like a flag of truce. At 28, Elena was a study in contrasts. Sharp cheekbones from her Mexican-Italian roots, a sleeve of watercolor tattoos blooming up her arm, roses entwined with circuit boards, symbols of beauty in the mechanical. Her dark eyes, framed by lashes thick as river reeds, softened as Sage braked to a halt. Me lose, Elena murmured, pulling Sage into an embrace that smelled of jasmine and fresh ground beans. No questions, just the steady rhythm of her breath against Sage's temple. They climbed the stairs in silence, the door clicking shut behind them like a seal on secrets. Inside, sunlight slanted through blinds, gilding the chaos of half-finished sculptures and canvases leaning like drunken soldiers. Elena led Sage to the window seat, a nest of cushions overlooking the bustling street below, where vendors hawked tamales and dreams. Tell me, Elena said finally, her fingers tracing idle patterns on Sage's knee, comfort, not demand. Sage spilled it all. The slammed door, Ruby's venomous words, the oranges like omens on the porch. She called it a sin, Elena. Like I'm broken. Like loving you makes me less. Her voice hitched, the dam breaking in quiet sobs that Elena absorbed without flinching. This was their rhythm. Sage's tempests met with Elena's calm shores. Elena, who'd fled a conservative family in the Windy City for the border's raw pulse, knew the sting of rejection all too well. Pride's a poison, amor, she said softly. It blinds us to what's real. Your mama. She's scared. Of losing you, of facing her own ghosts. Across town, Ruby dragged herself to the diner. The Desert Rose, a relic of Route 66 glamour, now faded to Formica counters and vinyl booths patched with duct tape. The lupus ache throbbed in her joints like a warning drum, But she tied on her apron with grim determination. Pride demanded she show up, chin high, serving huevos rancheros to truckers and retirees who eyed her with pitying glances. Word traveled fast in El Paso. By noon, the whispers had started. Mrs. Garcia from the church auxiliary leaned over her coffee, voice honeyed with malice. Heard your sage is experimentin' with that artsy type. Such a shame, Ruby. Family's all we got in these hard times. Ruby's spatula clattered against the grill, grease popping like gunfire. Mind your plate, Carmen, she snapped, her accent thickening with rage. But inside the words festered. Survival meant the diner. Tips that covered her meds, the mortgage that loomed like a vulture. If the gossip turned to boycotts, if the old guard crossed the threshold no more. She plated orders on autopilot, her mind replaying Sage's face, that defiant spark dimmed to embers. By shift's end, exhaustion pinned her to the back office stool, the ledger mocking her with red ink. Pride had kept her silent about the debts, the skipped doctor visits. But for Sage? What price was she willing to pay? That evening, Ruby drove the winding road to the old mission, the air thick with sagebrush and the faint tang of the river. She lit a candle before Our Lady of Guadalupe, the flame dancing shadows across the saint's serene face. Why her, Virgin? Why my girl? The words poured out in a torrent, mingled with sobs that echoed off the stone walls. Memories surfaced. Papa's rough hands teaching Sage to ride her first pony, the three of them laughing under starlit skies before the accident stole him. Family was sacred, unyielding. Yet as the candle guttered, a seed of doubt took root. Was pride worth the void it carved? Sage, meanwhile, lost herself in Elena's studio, charcoal smudging her fingers as she sketched the porch scene from memory. Oranges scattered, a mother's silhouette rigid against the sunset. Elena watched from the kitchenette, brewing tea with steady hands. You don't have to choose sides, Sage. Love isn't a battlefield. But Sage knew better. In El Paso, lines were drawn in the sand, washed away only by floods. As night fell, Elena pulled her close on the worn couch, their foreheads touching in quiet solidarity. Whispers of plans, Santa Fe galleries, shared studios, wove through the dark, fragile as spider silk. But betrayal brewed unseen. Ruby, leaving the mission, spotted them through the gallery window. Sage and Elena, entwined in laughter over a sketch. The sight twisted like a knife, pride igniting to fury. In a haze, she marched to the diner's ancient landline, dialing the church elder's number. Father Ruiz, it's Ruby. About my daughter. There's something unholy brewin'. We need to talk. The words escaped before regret could catch them. A betrayal born of fear, sealing a rift that would soon swallow them whole. The fallout hit like a haboob, that sudden wall of dust that blinds and buries the unwary. By Sunday Mass, the congregation's eyes bored into Sage like hot pokers, whispers slithering through the pews like sidewinders. Father Ruiz's sermon on Sodom and Gomorrah thundered from the pulpit, his gaze lingering on the Vargas family as if the brimstone were meant for them alone. Sage sat rigid beside Elena, who'd insisted on coming for support, her hand a secret anchor under the hymnal. Ruby knelt rows ahead, rosary beads clicking like judgment, her back a wall of unyielding posture. After the final amen, the ambush came in the narthex. Mrs. Garcia and her coven of auxiliary ladies encircled them, Bibles clutched like shields. Sage, honey, Mrs. Garcia cooed, her smile sharp as cactus spines. We're praying for you. For deliverance from temptations. Elena stiffened, her Chicago fire flaring in a cool retort. Prayer's fine, but love doesn't need saving. The women gasped, crossing themselves as if warding off the devil himself. Ruby hovered at the edge, her face a mask of stone, but her eyes, those deep brown pools, betrayed the storm within. Sage bolted from the church, Elena trailing, the Rio Grande's muddy flow mirroring her churning thoughts as they crossed the bridge into Juarez for air. The border blurred here, American asphalt giving way to Mexican cobblestones, vendors hawking elotes and trinkets under the watchful eyes of federals. This is Mama's doing, Sage seethed, kicking a pebble into the sluggish current. She called them, told Father Ruiz everything. Elena pulled her into a shaded alcove near a mural of revolutionary heroes, their painted eyes fierce with forgotten causes. You don't know that. But if she did, it's fear not hate. Give her time. Time was the luxury they didn't have. Back in El Paso, Ruby's shift at the diner was a gauntlet. Customers trickled to a halt, the bell above the door chiming less like opportunity and more like a dirge. Old Mr. Ramirez, who tipped faithfully for 20 years, slid his check with a pitying shake of his head. Can't abide the scandal, Ruby. Family values, you know. By closing, the register echoed hollow, the red ink in the ledger bleeding deeper. That night, alone in the house that now felt like a tomb, Ruby rifled through Sage's old room. Faded ribbons from art shows, a half-finished quilt they'd started together, stitches of blue and green like the river at twilight. Pride choked her as she dialed the pharmacy, voice steady. Refill on the hydroxychloroquine. Yeah, the lupus meds. The hold music mocked her, a tinny mariachi tune, while the automated voice announced the copay, $200. Her savings? Drained by last month's flare. Survival whispered temptations. Sell the house? Beg from kin who barely scraped by themselves? Or swallow the bitter pill of apology? Bridge the chasm with her daughter? She hung up, tears carving tracks through her makeup, and drove to the hospitaler, not for herself but for answers on aid programs. Pride be damned. Sage and Elena found solace in the gallery's back room, surrounded by Sage's latest series. Portraits of border women, faces etched with resilience, eyes holding stories of migration and mending. This one's you, Sage said, unveiling a canvas of Elena amid wildflowers, her tattoos vivid as fresh ink. Elena's response was a kiss to Sage's temple, soft and sure, a promise amid the chaos. But chaos escalated when Sage's phone buzzed. A text from an old friend. Heard about your mama. Church is organizing a prayer circle for your soul. Rough chica. The confrontation brewed over pozole at Elena's, steam rising like unspoken accusations. Sage paced, her curls a halo of fury. She's poisoning everything. My art, our life, because she can't face her own regrets. Elena, ever the mediator, advocated grace. Your mama's from a world that taught her love comes with chains. Break them for her, Sage. Show her freedom. But Sage's heart, raw as exposed nerve, rebelled. She stormed out into the neon-lit night, hitchhiking back to the ranch house under a canopy of stars that offered no mercy. Ruby was waiting on the porch, a lantern's glow haloing her like a penitent saint. The air hummed with cicadas, the desert's nocturne. Sit, she said, voice gravelly from unshed tears. Sage hesitated, then collapsed onto the steps, the space between them vast as the Chihuahuan expanse. I called Father Ruiz, Ruby confessed, the words a dam breaking. Out of fear. For you. For us. Thought if I named the devil, it'd flee. Sage's laugh was hollow. I'm not the devil, Mama. I'm your daughter. Loving who I love doesn't make me less Vargas. The argument unfurled like a flagging gale. Ruby's litany of traditions, church edicts, the town's invisible noose. Sage's pleas for acceptance, visions of a life unapologetic. Words flew. Selfish, ungrateful, small-minded, until exhaustion silenced them. In the quiet, Ruby reached out, her hand hovering before settling on Sage's knee. The diner's dyin'. My meds. I can't afford 'em. And it's all tied to this, to you. The vulnerability cracked Sage open, revealing the fear beneath her fire. Then let me help. Elena's got connections, grants for artists, maybe for you too. But you gotta let go of the pride that's killing us both. As thunder rumbled distant, promising rain, a fragile truce formed. Sage would stay, help with the diner. Ruby would attend a PFLA meeting, Elena suggested, dipping a toe into understanding. But betrayal's shadow lingered. Unbeknownst to them, Mrs. Garcia had overheard the church call, twisting Ruby's words into fuel for a petition drive. Boycott the desert rose until the wayward daughter repents. The storm was gathering, climax poised like lightning on the horizon. Rain came that night, a monsoon fury that turned arroyos to raging veins, flooding the lowlands and stranding semis on the interstate. Ruby lay awake, the patter on the tin roof a relentless drumbeat mirroring her pulse. Sage slept fitfully in the next room, dreams tangled with canvases and condemnations. By morning the world was reborn in mud-slick glory, puddles reflecting fractured skies. But renewal was illusion. The petition hit like a sucker punch when Ruby arrived at the diner, a stack of flyers taped to the door. Support family values, boycott sin at Desert Rose. Her hands shook as she tore them down, the paper sodden and smeared like yesterday's regrets. Inside, the phone rang off the hook. Cancellations from the breakfast rush, whispers from suppliers hedging bets. Pride urged her to burn the flyers, march to the church with fire in her veins. But survival? It pinned her to the stool, calculator clicking futile sums. Sage arrived mid-morning, her bike caked in mire, eyes widening at the wreckage. Mama! What now? Together they scrubbed counters in silence, the diner's hum a requiem for lost camaraderie. Elena arrived at noon with takeout from her favorite taqueria. Carne asada tacos wrapped in foil like peace offerings. Her presence was a bomb and a barb. Ruby stiffened, old habits dying hard, but nodded curtly. Gracias, she muttered, the word a bridge's first plank. Over lunch in the empty booth, plans hatched. Elena's gallery contacts for a pop-up show of Sage's work, proceeds to bolster the diner. A GoFundMe for Ruby's meds, spun as a community lifeline. Sage's eyes lit with hope, her hand brushing Elena's under the table, a quiet claim that Ruby pretended not to see. But conflict simmered. That afternoon as Sage prepped a mural proposal for the community center. Bold strokes of intertwined rivers symbolizing unity. Ruby's lupus flared vicious, a fire in her bones that dropped her behind the grill. Sage found her curled on the floor, breath shallow, sweat beading like dew on her brow. Panic surged. Elena rushed in, calling 911 while Sage cradled her mother's head, whispering prayers in Spanglish please. The ambulance wailed through flooded streets to Providence Hospital, where fluorescent lights buzzed like accusatory bees. In the ER bay, separated by curtains thin as whispers, truth spilled. Doctors confirmed the flare, exacerbated by stress, prescribing steroids and rest Ruby couldn't afford. Sage paced the hall, Elena a steady shadow, their fingers laced in defiant solidarity. This is on her, Sage hissed. The boycott, the hate, it's killing her. Elena pulled her close, murmuring, and you, don't let it steal your light. When Ruby woke, groggy from 4 drips, the sight of them, Sage's tear-streaked face, Elena's gentle vigilance, pierced deeper than any needle. Discharge brought them home to a house transformed by rain. The porch awash, quilts salvaged from the attic smelling of damp earth. In the lamplight, confrontation crested. You did this, Ruby accused weakly from her bed, propped on pillows like a deposed queen. Your choices brought the storm. Sage knelt beside her, voice steel wrapped in silk. No, Mama. Your pride did. Hiding the illness, calling the church. It buried us in mud. Elena hovered at the door, offering space but no retreat. The betrayal deepened when Father Ruiz visited, Bible in hand, his pastoral care laced with ultimatums, repent or lose the community's grace. Ruby wavered, her hand clutching the rosary, eyes flicking to Sage's painting on the wall. A desert bloom defying drought. Leave us, she told the priest, voice a rasp of revelation. He departed with a huff, the door's slam echoing the night's thunder. In the hush, Ruby extended a trembling hand. I was wrong. Scared. But losing you. That's the real sin. Tears bridged the gap. Sages falling onto Ruby's blanket like rain on parched soil. Elena joined them, a quiet trinity sharing stories. Elena's escape from family disownment, Ruby's unspoken grief over Papa's prideful silences. Vulnerability wove them closer, threads of understanding mending the tear. But climax loomed larger. The next day the boycott peaked. A protest outside the diner, signs bobbing like buoys in a sea of judgment. God hates deviants. Sage faced them head-on, easel in tow, painting live. A mother and daughter clasping hands across a divide, Elena's profile etched in the background as witness. The crowd murmured, some sneering, others pausing, Mr. Ramirez among them, his eyes softening at the raw emotion on canvas. Ruby watched from the window, heart pounding, the choice crystallizing. Pride meant isolation, a slow starvation. Survival meant surrender, embracing the love that threatened to upend her world. As sirens wailed distant, flood cleanup crews, she stepped out, apron still tied, voice carrying over the din. This is my home. My daughter. My family. Come eat or go, but leave the hate at the door. Gasps rippled. A few turned away, but others lingered, drawn by the human fracture laid bare. The protest fizzled, rain-scented air clearing like conscience. Inside, as the first stragglers ordered coffee, Ruby pulled Sage aside. I choose you. Whatever it takes. The words were a vow, humanistic in their imperfection. No grand redemption, just a mother's faltering step toward grace. Weeks blurred into a tentative thaw, the monsoon scars fading as summer's end whispered promises of cooler winds. The diner's boycott crumbled under the weight of quiet defections. Old patrons returning sheepishly, lured by Sage's mural now adorning the community center. A testament to borders crossed, not guarded. Elena's pop-up show in the gallery drew crowds from as far as Austin. Sage's pieces fetching prices that padded Ruby's med-fund and seeded dreams of expansion. But healing wasn't linear. It meandered like the Rio, pooling in eddies of doubt. Ruby attended her first PFLA meeting in a strip mall community room, folding chair creaking under her as stories echoed hers. Mothers grappling with sons' truths, fathers learning to listen. She clutched a styrofoam cup of weak coffee, pride's remnants prickling like withdrawal. Sage waited outside, sketching passersby under street lamps, Elena's arm a warm weight around her waist. "Give her time," Elena said, as if reading the worry in Sage's lines. When Ruby emerged, face flushed but eyes clearer, she managed a nod. "Folks like us. We survive by changin'." Slowly, their evenings evolved into rituals. Dinners on the porch, pozole simmering with shared silences broken by laughter. Ruby shared tales of her youth, stolen dances at quinceañeras, a crush on a girl from the orchard she'd buried under duty's weight. "I knew feelin's like yours, Mija. Just never had the courage." Sage listened, charcoal paused mid-stroke, the confession a key unlocking hidden doors. Elena became a fixture, her Chicago quips lightening the air, teaching Ruby to text emojis that made her chuckle despite herself. Yet conflict lingered, a undercurrent pulling at seams. The church auxiliary's final jab came via anonymous letter. Excommunication looms for unrepentant souls. Ruby burned it in the sink, flames licking the edges as Sage watched. "Let him," she said, voice steady. But inwardly the pull warred, decades of faith versus this new gospel of acceptance. Survival tipped the scale when a flare hit again, milder but insistent. Sage drove her to appointments, Elena handling the diner's books with a spreadsheet wizardry that turned red to black. Climax crested not in fury but fragility. Ruby's 60th birthday, a modest affair under Chinaberry boughs. Sage unveiled her gift, a portrait triptych. Ruby young and fierce on horseback, midlife bent over quilts, now silver-haired but unbowed, Elena and Sage flanking her in the final panel, hands linked. "For the woman who chose survival over pride," Sage whispered. Tears carved paths down Ruby's cheeks, the first unguarded since Papa's funeral. She pulled them both into a fierce embrace, the desert breeze carrying away the last vestiges of betrayal. In the months that followed, life wove forward. The diner thrived as a haven, murals by Sage drawing artists and allies, Elena curating Border Hearts exhibits that sparked dialogues across divides. Ruby's health stabilized, grants easing the burden, her rosary now including prayers for love in all its forms. Sage and Elena planned a life together. A studio in the hills, canvases of shared sunsets, but rooted here, where the river taught resilience. One dusk as they walked the riverbank, willows trailing fingers in the current, Ruby paused. "I almost lost you to my blindness. But you saved me." Sage linked arms with her mother, Elena on the other side, a chain unbroken. The sun dipped, gilding the water in liquid fire. A horizon vast and forgiving. Pride had been the chain, survival the key. In El Paso's embrace, fierce, flawed, eternal, they chose each other. A humanistic hymn to loves that endure, borders be damned. The end came not in tragedy but quiet triumph. A family reforged, not flawless but whole. As stars wheeled overhead, Sage sketched the scene. 3 silhouettes against the twilight, hands clasped, hearts open. In the margins she wrote, "To Mama for choosing us."